Hello students, welcome to week 6 of Site 10 General Psychology. In this session, we will talk about personality, characters, and individual differences, two major, two major topics in psychology from the beginning years of developing psychology as a scientific field in universities, especially after ending World War II, especially in characterology. Characterology is the science of knowing about the characteristic of any individual and knowing about the typology of personality in many different races, in different categorization, for example, in an organization, in societies, and communities, and minorities. And we should have some scientific and evidence-based approaches to distinguish between the different types of personality. Because of that, it is very important to have good assessment tools to evaluate, at first before evaluate, to gathering information, to data collecting, and after that to data analysis and evaluate, and finally have reaching some results and having some results and having a good discussion on them to find the final scientific, academic, evidence based facts on human nature and persistency in some characteristic of human beings, so called sometimes personality, sometimes so called character, and also in very, very specific differences between people. So, at first, you should know about the theorists that have talked about the categorization of personality and human nature. As you know, the science of knowing about the mental disorders begins with the two aspects of life. One, different aspects of personality. Two, different aspects and different levels of consciousness. It is very important to know in which level of consciousness and in which level of personality we are talking about. The beginner, the greatest pioneer of psychotherapy is Freud, Sigmund Freud, as a German scientist, German neurologist, German physician, and after that also because of World War II, at the end, at the last year of his life, he went to Britain, Great Britain, and died in London. Before that, he was always in Europe, in Berlin. Okay, let's go to the discussion. What is personality? What is our definition, scientific based definition of personality? As you see in the PowerPoint slide, the pattern of enduring characteristic that produce consistency and individuality in a given person. So we have three items. One, enduring. Two, consistency. And three, individuality. We are talking about the characteristics, about the traits, about the features of a given person and or at the level of personality, at the categorization of personality traits. For example, when we say marketing characters or pampered characters or dominant characters or supportive characters or supportive personality, you can change the word character. In this level, you can change the word character to word personality. They are interchangeable together. So in different aspects, in different science of character, science of personality, we are talking. The first part is about Freud, psychodynamic approaches to personality. The specific part of psychodynamic is called psychoanalysis. Psychoanalysis is specifically that part of psychodynamic which brought up by Freud. Other parts is psychodynamic. We are talking about the forces underlying your psychological experiences. Those forces are called your dynamic. Psychodynamic, we are deeply talking about the forces that urges your behavior, that urges your uh, thinking and sometimes your emotions. Freud, psychoanalytic theory says mapping the unconscious mind. Psychodynamic approach to personality says personality is motivated by inner forces, dynamic, and conflicts. Conflict and stress and anxiety, especially conflict and anxiety, are the major keywords in studying all psychodynamic approaches to personality, to human being, to mental disorders. We are looking for some major concepts when you are looking at a human being from the approach of psychodynamic or psychoanalysis and other deep psychological approaches, but specifically in Freud approach to human being, to personality, to development of human, to level of consciousness, level of personality. Conflict and anxiety are the major words. So personality is motivated by inner forces and conflicts about which people have little awareness. We are talking about consciousness, and over which they have no control. It is conflict, it is anxiety. There are forces that you don't want to know about them. You suppress, you repress, you deny. It is unconscious. Because of unconscious nature of those forces, you don't have any control over them. Because of that, when, for example, you come in my office and said, Doctor, sorry, I have some problems, but I don't know why I have, for example, in that specific situation, these destructive behaviors. I don't know why. It is not um, in my charge. I cannot control it. I say at first, you check your hormonal and your neurological, your brain chemical system. And secondly, go for psychoanalysis, as in the USA. When you say therapist is specifically used for psychoanalysis, or go for a therapist to find your conflicts, your inner forces. Psychoanalytic theory says, Sigmund Freud theory, that unconscious forces act as a determinants of personality. Determinants. Unconscious influencing on personality as the major part of your what? Of your sorry, I check it. Of your uh, specific actions and behaviors and emotions. What is unconscious? Unconscious is a part of the personality that contains the memories, knowledge, beliefs, feelings, urges, drives, and instincts, all which the individual is not aware. So, conscious is something different from aware. Aware is something different from awake. Conscious is the ultimate level. You are understanding when you are conscious, but you can only pay attention and concentrate when you are aware. So, a safe haven for memories of threatening events. These are the keywords. It is a safe haven. Why? Because you are suppressing, you are denying, you are hiding some things which you don't want to remember, because those are threatening, those are perceived threats, not real threats. After entering the psychological treatment, after entering, going for psychotherapy, and sometimes going to a psychiatrist and using medication and other treatment that we can do as mental health professional for you, you find that yes, it was safe for you because you want to create a safe environment for it. Your perception of that situation was threatening. Because of that, it says perceived threats. But your confrontation with those perceived threats are something like a safe haven. Freud maintained that to understand personality, it is necessary to expose what is in the unconscious. Freud sees the unconscious as the major part of personality. Three components of personality in Freudian theory is id, ego, and superego. What is it? The raw, unorganized, inborn part of personality. Raw, unorganized, inborn part of personality reduces tension created by the primitive drivers related to the hunger, sex, aggression, and irrational impulses. Works based on the pleasure of principle of pleasure or pleasure principle. Reduce tension and maximize satisfaction. Also, what you know about the phrase uh, inner child, some specialists, some semi specialists, some ordinary people think that id is the same inner child. The id is not the inner child. Inner child is something different. Inner child is one part of your reality testing, but it is not real. It is inborn with you. The id is an intrinsic, instinctual part of you. So the ego or the executive part of your personality create a balance between the needs, urged by id and your reality, your real position because of that executive functions of your personality. So something like attention, something like judgment, thinking, concentration, morality, and also not morality, social interactions, all are executive parts of your personality works with the ego, operates under reality principle. Instinctual energy from the id is restrained to keep individuals safe and to help integrate the person into society. These are the duties, these are the functions of the ego. And the final component, the last component, is the superego, the final components of personality development. It represents the rights and wrongs of society as handed down by person, parents, teachers, and other important people. Includes the conscience, makes you feel guilty if you do something morally wrong. Some people say, some scientists, some experts in psychology and psychodynamics says that superego works based on the principle of morality. Some some of them says that it works on the punishment or guilt feeling. So the inhibitor part, the moral part of your personality is your superego. It says only I want, without consideration any type of morality, anything out of yourself, your power, your force, your resources. Your it doesn't work to anything, only one thing, like a very uh, lower age child. Superego says, no, 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 you cannot want it. I'm your parent. I'm your inner parent. I'm your inner teacher. I am your conscience. Stop it. Superego is the symbolic representation of your socialization process, of your culture, of your religion, or your parenting style, your parents' parenting style. The balance between them, that yes, we cannot do anything we want as we are not eat. And we cannot stop always because of the society, as says superego. The executive part, gathering information and making balance between different aspects of your wanting, of your resources, of your stressful, and of your other risk behaviors, all the details are integrated together by a healthy ego. Because um, at the end of this book, you will know in the mental disorders, you will know that, sorry, ego can be the source of healthy personality. And also, the only part that you can, that make you as a person with mental disorder is your always ego. Because sometimes in some approaches in psychotherapy, especially in psychotherapy, they don't want to talk about ego. They think that ego is not a good component of your personality, but we don't have any good or bad component. We have efficient or inefficient, match or mismatch component. It was the major analogy by Freud. Freud says that your personality is something like an iceberg. The major part you cannot see, it is unconscious. Major part of your id, major part of your ego, always all the id the components is under the water, unconscious. A major part of superego also is unconscious and also ego. In Freud's model of personality, there are three major components: the id, the ego, and the superego. As the iceberg analogy shows, only a small portion of personality is conscious. Many psychological scientists, many psychological theorists at first, like Freud, like Piaget, like Eric Erikson, like uh, Vygotsky, one of the major questions for them was that what are the course of changes in our life? Course of changes in our life, so-called developmental stage courses, or development of personality, or for example, cognitive personal development, or psychosocial development, or sociocultural development, and other aspects we are looking at to the course of changes in your personality in your life during your lifespan. The first one, the first uh, written and very, very um, organized model for changing your personality provided by Freud, Sigmund Freud. Freud says that we have these parts. Before going to the stages of psychosexual stages, developmental stages by Freud, we should know how personality develops. Individuals encounter conflicts between the demands of society and their own urges for pleasure. You know that Freud felt civilization is the source of anxiety because civilization says to you that don't be on your nature, be on what we say to you, be on what we accept to you, be as a person with a socially acceptable behavior, socially acceptable thinking, socially acceptable, for example, emotions. Because of that, also he has a very good book about civilization and the role of civilization in creating anxiety in uh, individuals. After that, Freud thought about fixation. Unresolved conflicts that persist behind the stage in which they first occur come from having needs ignored or being overindulged during that stage. We will talk about the stages. Here are the stages. We have, you see here, 5 stages. Stage one, oral stage. Second one, anal stage. Third one, phallic stage. Fourth one, latency period. It's not a stage. And fifth one is genital stage. With the duration of time between birth to 1.5, age of birth to 1.5, from 1.5 to 3 years old, from 3 years old to 6 year old for phallic stage, from 6 years old, age of 6 years old to adolescence, and adolescence to adulthood, not adolescence to your end of your life, adolescence to adulthood. Freud felt that between the age of 16 to 20, your personality development will be finished, and after that, you will never change. Also, there are many critics about this radical, very radical, uh, talking, very radical attitude to personality change. But it's a very good theory to have a good prediction about the future behaviors of all human beings. also when you are talking about a given person. Oral stage from birth to 1.5, age of 1.5. In each stage, the life force, so-called libido, is concentrated in one part of your body. Because of this concentration, your life will continue. Your survival will be kept, will be maintained because of this concentration. Between the age of first birth to age of 1.5, you need only the major things you should do is eating. So the vital force, the libido, is concentrated on your oral part. Because of that, Freud called this stage oral stage. Infants' center of pleasure is the mouth. What does it mean, fixation? Before that, you should know fixation, remember fixation. Unresolved conflicts that persist beyond the stage in which they first occur. For example, after the age of 1.5 years old, you see, for example, at the age of 12, at the age of 35, at the age of 62, after ending the personality development or after ending the oral stage, you see the person, a given person, has a lot of instinctual behaviors, instinctual desires, which are related to anal, to oral stage. It is called, for example, oral fixation. In every stage, we will talk. If you have that stage fixation, what does it mean, and what we can see in you as an observer without any bias. Fixation in oral stage may lead to adult who is unusually integrated in oral activities. Hyper eating, hyper talking, hyper smoking, all the activities related to the oral area, your mouth. For example, he or she is 25 and you see that, wow, such a pleasure she has with eating, such a high pleasure she has with talking, such a high pleasure she or he has with smoking. And it is gender free, it is not related to your gender, your sexuality. It is not, there is no, also, we have some dominance in fixation, but it is a very, very little difference, not a huge difference. For example, these types of fixation can be more seen in males, and on that side, that type of fixation can be seen more in female. The next step is anal stage, especially for toilet training, between the age of 1.5 years old to 3 years old. Child center of pleasure, we are talking about libido, we are talking about life force. Child center of pleasure is the anus. Toilet training at the age of 2. The first time you are training to have a personal choice is about your going to toilet or not going to toilet. And as also only Freud says that these important situation, or this way or that way, going or not going, and how to toilet, how to have a toilet or not to have a regular personal social base toilet training, it is the first type of conflict between the age of 1.5 years old to 3 years old. It is called anal stage. Fixation in anal stage may lead to adult who is unusually rigid, orderly, and punctual, or the opposite. Sometimes it's yes, go to the toilet as a child at the same time with a very predefined procedures, and after that he or she have a lot of fixation in this period. For example, if you go to army, you can find many people with a very high level of discipline that it is very good, very useful for army. But out of the army position, you see that, there are always something like that. It is not about the good trait or bad trait. It is about proper trait or improper trait. It is about matched trait or mismatched trait. Because of that, we are talking about a word so-called fixation. Fixation is the same thing that now in the modern clinical psychology, in the modern psychiatry, in diagnostic and statistical manual of mental disorders, so-called in acronym by DSM, when we talk about personality disorders, we are talking about fixations. Also, we have near 10 major personality disorders. In the Freudian approach to personality, these are the fixation. The Freudian approach to personality, these are the fixation. Emphatic stage between age of 3 to age of 6. Child's central pleasure is the genital, in the sexual organs. We have oedipal complex here. A child unconscious sexual interest in the opposite sex parent typically resolved by identification, gaining the traits of my same sex parents. For example, I was a child, a boy, and I was identifying myself with my father, not my mother, because my father was my same sex parents, for example. And after that, in the concept of oedipal complex, Freud says between the age of 4 to 6, every human being wants to identify with the same sex parents, daughters with their mothers, boys with their fathers. Identify the female traits, identify the male traits. And after that, have some competition with the same sex parents. You see that many daughters near the age of 5 come their father and says, "This is my father." Because of that, everybody knows that the first man a girl loves in her life is her father. And the first woman a man loves in his life is his mother. Because of that, it is not about sexual behavior. It is about the gender identity. It is about the sexual differentiation between males and females and identification. It is a part of socialization. You should know what behaviors are proper for you as a man, what behaviors are proper for you as a socially acceptable woman. You will learn from your mother at the first stage. We will talk about the other stage. At the first stage, between the age of 6, of 3 to 6, you are identified as your same sex behaviors from your same sex parent, and on other parts, you want to capture his or her position. Because of that, it calls complex. Audible, you can go to internet and read the ancient story of Oedipus, who was Oedipus. It is about the Oedipal complex, someone who wanted to kill his father and marry with his mother. He was Oedipus. With the same sex parent wanting to be like that person, imitating his or her behavior, and adopting similar beliefs and values. We are talking about emotions, we are talking about behaviors, we are talking about beliefs, we are talking about values. Difficulties in follicle stage may lead to improper sexual behavior and failure to develop a conscience. Failure to develop a conscience. Okay. A latency period, as Freud says, from the age of 6 years old to adolescence, children's sexual concerns are temporarily put aside in latency period. It is the calmest period in life, also based on Freud theory, between the 6 to 12 or 13. It's a good time for education, because of that. Some scientists, some educational scientists says that because of that, the first years, the starting of elementary school is near the age of 6 in different countries, between difference between 1 year, 6 or 7. Because based on Freudian theory on psychosexual stage, This is the calmest period of whole your life, between the age of 6 to 12 or 13, between the age of 7 to, for example, 12. It is latency period. There is no problem with other people. And genital stage, adolescence to adulthood, is sexual feelings re-emerge. It is not orientation is not to your father or to mother. It is your to your not same. It is heterosexuality to your girlfriend, to your boyfriend, other female, other male, not only your family members. Because of that, it is not uh, the phallic state. It is genital state. In phallic stage, concentration is to identification, the sexual belief, sexual will. It is related to your gender identity. But genital state is related to your sexual behavior, not your gender identity or your sexual identity. So from adolescence to adulthood, beginning to adulthood, I think at the age of 18 to 20, it is genital stage, sexual feelings reemerges, focus on mature adult sexuality or sexual intercourse. One of the most famous phrases uh, deriving from the Freud's sexual stages theory is defense mechanism. Also, after Freud, many other scientists, many other authors, many other novelists, many other ordinary people in their ordinary talking conversation with each other, now you can find it, use the word defense mechanism. What do you want to defend on by your mechanism? Against everything that creates anxiety in you. By say, it's not my problem, it's your problem. For example, this projection. Everybody is like me, projection. No, there's nothing bad here. It is denial. Oh, I cannot remember that, repression, and other things. Wow, such a good days we had in there, for example, last 2 years. It is regression. Yeah, we will talk about in certain details in the next slides. So defense mechanisms, unconscious strategies people use to reduce anxiety by concealing its source from themselves and others. By concealing the source from others and from themselves. Unconscious at first. Defense mechanisms are unconscious, not subconscious, not conscious, completely unconscious. You don't have any awareness of their being, of their content, of their form, of their context, nothing at all. Unconscious strategies people use to reduce anxiety by concealing its source from themselves and others. One of the most important of them, the first defense mechanism that Freud discovered was repression. And also we have something for suppression, denial, regression, reaction formation, and we will talk about it. Repression, what does it mean, repression? As the first discovered defense mechanism in human mind, in human soul, in human being, especially from the approach of Sigmund Freud, so-called psychoanalysis approach, and from the overall approach of depth psychology, so-called psychodynamic approach. Primary defense mechanism in which unacceptable or unpleasant id impulses are pushed back into the unconscious. For example, you want to eat something which is not yours, and you are shameful about your wanting, you are shameful about your desire, and say, no, 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 it's not my desire. Sorry, what desire you are talking about? And other things. It is repression. Unconscious primary defense mechanism for unacceptable or unpleasant id desires. You remember we were talking about it as the childish parts of your personality. You see here 8 major defense mechanism: repression, unacceptable or unpleasant impulses are pushed back into unconscious. Recreation, people behave as if they were at the earlier stage of development. So, wow, such a good days we had. Displacement, the expression of unwanted feeling or thought, is redirected from a more threatening, powerful person to a weaker one. Repression. It is replacement. I replace my attention from the threatening, the anxiety producer matter to a very neutral or weaker matter. I replace it. And it is displacement and rationalization, very, very popular, very, very usual, especially in some cultures that they think that they know everything. Some like, for example, like developed countries, also in America, you know that many people are rationalization, using rationalization or rationalize everything for them. It is not about their reasoning, about using ration. It is about rationalizing. What does it mean? People provide self justifying explanations. Explanation based on the self justification yourself, in place of the actual but threatening reason for the behavior. Human beings try to do everything only for escaping the reality. Because of that, we know that when we use defense mechanism, the level of anxiety will reduce. Yes, it is correct. But finally, you are distorting the reality. The major problem with using defense mechanism is that defense mechanisms lead to reality distortion. The next one is denial. People refuse to accept or acknowledge an anxiety producing piece of information. Denial. No, 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 it's not my problem. It's your problem. No, I don't think, for example, in grief process, you see that the first stage of grief process, we talked about it in the previous session by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross theory of confronting with death. The first stage was denial. You are wrong. No. Maybe, for example, when they say to you that you have a cancer and you have only 3 months to live for survive, the first reaction is denial. No, maybe the doctors are wrong. Take another lab test and other things. Denial here is something like that. People refuse to accept or acknowledge an anxiety producing piece of information. Projection. Nothing, nothing is more inhibitor for this self-discovery, for self-knowledge, for self-awareness. Nothing is more inhibitor, more dangerous than projection. Projection says, I am always okay. If there is something wrong because of you are not okay, it doesn't allow you to self-discovery, to discover yourself, your fault. What? What is the problem? If you want to be a complete person, it is not about not having the negative point. When you don't have any negative point, at first it is not real, at first. So, in idealistic situation, if you don't have any negative point, you are not perfect. Perfect is including white and black, and also many things are not just black or just white. They are gray scales. Perfect is not always 0 or 1. It is not binary. The nature, the fact, the truth is not a binary matter. It's a decimal. It's a matter of to be decimal with different, unlimited, infinite probability between 0 to 1. For example, a mathematical approach. from the paint and color approach, we know the infinite, unlimited range of colors between black and white, so-called grayscales. And also we can use it if you want to know more scientific about this approach to human being and also into industry, to technology. Professor Lotfizadeh, so-called, the major name is Lotfizadeh in America. He's famous by the name of Professor Zadeh. He died, I think, 3 or 4 years ago. Professor Zadeh has a major theory, so-called, it is fuzzy logic theory. Fuzzy logic theory was the major theory to change very huge computers to my laptop. Very huge. For example, in 1955, I thought the first industrial computer was something like 2 major bedrooms, only one computer, 2 major bedrooms, the size of one computer for data processing, with many, many electricity, with many, many hot water and cold water and hot environment, and it is very difficult. Why? It was about electronics, not about the photons. It was about the wires, not about the transition, not about the induction and other parts that you should know about them better than me. You should learn about them better than me from the, for example, electrical engineers. But the Professor Zadeh create and find one of the major natural, total natural laws, so-called fuzzy logic. It is very important. Fuzzy logic is not only a technological or engineering principle. It is a principle for have a good attitude to your life, for have a good logic to your life. It is a technological part of relativity principle by Albert Einstein. It's at the same page, but very technological, very more mathematical, and also more concentrated and with a narrow approach to technology. And sublimation, the art, as Freud says, because of the sublimation. You convert your complexes, your anxieties, your major problems to socially acceptable behavior, to socially acceptable emotions, to socially acceptable mind by sublimation. Sublimation is the roots of creating any artistic masterpiece, any artistic master. Also, consider that we are talking about the psychoanalytic theory of Sigmund Freud. Many of them has rejected after, yes, the Freud is for the first decade of 20th century. After, for example, about 12 decades, yes, many of them are rejected. Many of them are approved and again approved and again approved, especially after coming to behaviorism, to cognitivism, to biology, to psychotherapy, examine other approaches to human beings. After 12 decades, we know that, psychoanalysis, and also we will talk about no neuropsychologists like Jung, I mean Jungian psychology, Jungian positive psychologists. For example, Jung talked about the archetypes, major consciousness, about the vitality, about the life, not only about the, for example, human beings. And the last one is socially acceptable lying. It is called reaction formation. I hate you, but I show that I love you. Reaction formation. Unconscious impulses are expressed as their opposite in consciousness. Opposite in consciousness. When you hate someone, and shows that, yes, I love you. Why? Because you are in a fearful position and you don't have any courage to show your, for example, you're hating your problem. Because, and you don't know that you are hating that man, that gentleman, that lady. You don't know anything. All defense mechanisms are experiencing, are occurring in the at the unconscious level, not at the conscious or semi-conscious levels. After Freud, many of his colleagues went out and create their own approaches to life based on the basic components especially about the id, ego, and superego categorization of personality, not sexual, psychosexual development. Psychosexual development was only for Freud, from Freud, and other major concept, day-driven from Freud, was unconsciousness. Unconsciousness was the major part, was the masterpiece of Freud's life, discovering unconsciousness. There is a black and white movie, I think it is for 50s, decade of 50s, and Montgomery Clift, a very famous actor, Montgomery Clift, played the role of Freud. It's a very good movie if you want to know about, see a good movie about the Freudian approach to life and the real life of Freud based on his writing on his life about his childhood, about adulthood, how he became Sigmund Freud, and also near the 20 years or 30 years of his of the last 2 decades of his life. It's a good movie about Freud. We will talk about Carl Jung just now. There is another movie, I think it is 2013 or something a little older, about the conversation between Freud and Jung. The title of movie is Dangerous Method. Dangerous Method. It's a very good movie, 2013 or 2011, about the conversation, very important, very vital important, which lead to separating Freud and Jung and Carl Gustav Jung. Many people, also many people like me, think that Carl Gustav is not a divine prophet, I know, but his value in life, his value interpretation of life is something like a religion, something like a prophet. Carl Gustav Jung, we will talk about it. And also in organizations, because you are students of business and management, you should know about the concepts of Jung in your organization. If you want to know about it, you should see and read the works of Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson, a Canadian from the U of T, University of Toronto. Jordan Peterson is the most famous Jungian psychologist, and also with a very, very rigid, radical religious beliefs about God, about sexuality, but he's very famous, and his attitude or organization, and it says the phrase is organizational shadow. Shadow is a very famous word in the Jungian approach to human being. Because of shadow, Jordan Peterson knows about many black or hidden parts of organizations. Okay, so neo-Freudian psychologists, the followers of Freud, co-workers of Freud, 3 or 4 of them, major co-workers of Freud, separate from Freud, and based on the accepting the concept of unconsciousness, the major part of your soul. Also, soul is not a professional vocabulary in psychology. It is not so routine, so regular between the scientific psychologists, academic psychologists to use the word soul. The only approach they use the word soul in contrast with the word self, in the contrast with the word spirit, in the contrast with the word ego, soul, ego, spirit, and self, is the psychoanalysis, and also especially in Jungian approach and in hero's journey. Maybe I can talk about hero's journey in one single session, one separate session with you about the hero's journey by Joseph Campbell, 1948, I think. And Joseph Campbell and hero's journey that you can find in Star Wars, in Harry Potter, and other movies. You can find the hero's journey, the course of hero's journey, 12 stages of changing in Harry Potter, or in Star Wars, you can find the 12 stage of hero's journey. And I have uploaded, I think, one video in the Moodle for you about the different stages of hero's journey, because the hero's journey say how people change. If you want to be a good change manager, you should know at first some models. One of the approved, scientifically approved, historically approved, because hero's journey is based on the mythology. Joseph Campbell was not a psychologist. He was a mythologist, but based on the works of Carl Gustav Jung as a psychoanalyst, as a psychologist, combination of mythology and psychology, deep psychology, became something so-called hero's journey. Read about hero's journey. The famous book is A Hero with Thousand Faces. A Hero with Thousand Faces. Many books, many lectures, many videos in YouTube, many good interpretation, and many organizational usage application of hero's journey. It is so great to know about the hero's journey if you want to be a different strategic leadership, if you want to be a different strategic manager, different strategic future oriented leader, you should know about the change management models. Because if you don't know anything about the changes in future, what type of a strategic leader or manager you are, the leaders are future oriented, the non-leaders are not. Okay, let's go to talk about Carl Gustav Jung. Freud talked about unconsciousness, individual unconsciousness. The dark side of your soul, as Freud says, is your individual unconsciousness. It's very interesting that before entering to medicine and after that entering to psychoanalysis, and also something now called psychology or psychodynamic, or it is analytical psychology, the major approach of Carl Gustav Jung. Before all of them, Jung was so interested in studying in archaeology, the science of finding and interpreting the ancient civilizations, archaeology. And the final word coined by Jung, one of the greatest final words coined by Carl Gustav Jung in psychology, was archetype. Archetype, it's a root of archetype, is from archaeology. A common set of ideas, feelings, images, and symbols that we inherit from our ancestors, not our specific father, not our specific family, our ancestors, the whole human race, and even animals' ancestors. It is something more than your, for example, family tree. It's not about your father, your mother, your family-based ancestors. We are talking about the human race. There's a fascinating book in psychology, fascinating book in psychology, with the title of The Origin of Consciousness and the Breakdown of Bicameral Mind. Please note that to the title of this book, The Origin of Consciousness in the Breakdown of the Bicameral Mind. You can not only easily understand the title of the book, The Origin of Consciousness in the Breakdown of the Bicameral Mind by Julian James. Julian James died in 1997, I found. He was one of the greatest thinkers from Stanford University. In that book, Julian James approved that what is the origin of mind? Why we have mind? Chimpanzees don't have any mind. Gorillas don't have any mind. They are very, very near to us, very near. If you are not a neurologist, if you are not a neurosurgeon, you cannot distinguish between two skulls of a man or a chimpanzee, a man or a baboons, especially gorillas. You cannot understand. If you are not a neurosurgeon with a basic, specific science about the, for example, skulls. Okay? Archetypes, according to Carl Gustav Jung, universal symbolic representation of a pictorial person, object, or experience, such as good and evil. You see here, I asked my son that who is this gentleman, and because he's a professional boy in Harry Potter characters, he said, wow, it's Voldemort. Voldemort In Jungian psychology, you can go to internet and in YouTube, see the movies, not the movies, so the videos about the hero's journey in Harry Potter. Each of them is the major part of hero's journey. The owls at the first stage of Harry Potter's attack to the home, they are called to adventure. They say, Harry Potter, you should change your life. After that, Harry Potter was frightening and said, no, 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 I don't want to leave my home. Also, it was not his home. It was not his original family, but it was a comfort zone. Everybody wants to live in a comfort zone because of that. It is not the important that living after dying. It is more important that living before dying. It is very important. It's not important that that we have something like afterlife or not. Many of us are dying before dying because of that comfort zone. It's a catastrophe in your life. After comfort zone, you will enter the fear zone. After that, you will enter the learning zone, and finally, you will enter the growth zone. The growth zone, after sometimes, will become your new comfort zone, and again and again and again. The owls at the first movie of Harry Potter, they are they have some call to adventure. And after that, visiting the mentor in your life, I don't want to describe the course of hero's journey for you. But this gentleman, Mr. Voldemort, is the archetype of evil as Jungian perspective to life. Also, it is not only about the movies. If you know these two concepts, one, hero's journey, two, archetypes, you can be a very, very different, successful money maker, manager in your organization. Also, many managers knows them. If you want to, for example, have a good test for job matching, MBTI is the most famous test exam for job matching for your personality type. MBTI is based on the archetypes. You can go and study the roots of MBTI. In the Harry Potter books and movies, Voldemort may present the archetype of evil that you can see his beautiful picture, especially with his very beautiful nose. The next one, also please pronounce Karen Horn I, not Karen Horny, because it is written something like Horny, but the family name is Karen Horney because uh, she is the first psychoanalysis. Yes, she, and Freud's daughter, Anna Freud, were the first women. Yes, we can call them the first women in academic psychology. And Anna Freud was the first man in psychology known for being a lesbian, and she worked for freedom of LGBTQ, as you know. Just today, we are talking now, just today, it is the June 2nd. Just today is the day for one of the, it is actually Cameron or Cameron. You can, just now, just today, you can check the Google. The arm of the Google today is for one of the astronomers that he was fired from one of the U.S. organization, federal organization, only for being a gay. And he was a gay activist. I also died in 2011. Karen Horney championed women's issue. Believe personality develops in the context of social relationship and depends on the relationship between parents and child. The next one, the next gentleman also is great institute is in California, in Los Angeles. Adlerian Psychology Institute. It is the international institute. If you sometimes want to switch your field from business to psychology, I know the Adlerian Institute of Los Angeles is one of the greatest, most influential influences about the influential institutes all around the world about the Alfred Adler attitude to human being. Inferiority complex, the major concept. Feelings of inferiority in adults that they develop as children. When you are a child, you don't have any right to choose what you want. When they were small and limited in their knowledge about the world. This is the final part of psychodynamic approach to personality. The next part, it is about the traits. It is very interesting that the first word that associated to your mind when we are talking about personality is about the fixed, consistent traits, behavioral traits, emotional styles, and thought styles, everything and anything which is consistent in your life, we can say they are one major part of your personality. But it is interesting that the major components, major theories about the personality is not about the traits. Trait theory seeks to identify basic traits, consistent personality characteristics, and behavior displayed in different situations. You change your situation, you change your country, you change your city, you are going from adolescence to adulthood, marriage or divorce and immigration, changing your sexuality, changes your religion. You can change everything in different situations. You can find some fixed, consistent traits. Those traits in this approach, those traits are your personality. Necessary to describe personality. Propose that all people possesses certain traits, but the degree varies and can be quantified. So certain traits with different severity, with different description, with different usage in many people. So we are not different in human traits. We are different in human trait severity. We are different in human traits quantification. We are different in human traits usage or locations or states. The same major traits between different peoples in different categorization. One of some of them have like say that we have only five traits. Some of them say 16 traits. Different approaches, different categorization by traits, but different sciences and different approaches also, but the same traits with different dominancy, severity, location, and other things. Let's go to look at some trait-based approaches. One of the greatest and basic and most valuable and authoritative theories and categorization of personality is by Eysenck. Eysenck was died about 20 years ago, I think. But his son Michael Eising now is one of the pioneers, one of the brains in the field of behaviorism. Also, he is British from England and works with many American uh, institutes about the traits and trait approach to personality, and also especially in behaviorism, using the changing and modification of behavior in organization, in families, in personal life, individual life, and also social life for adolescents, for adults, and for old age people, and other matters which can be related to behavioral approach to human beings. Eysenck says we have three dimensions of personality: extraversion, neuroticism, and psychoticism. Extraversion says talk about the degree of your social ability, how expressive you are. It is the degree of extraversion. Also, on the other side is introversion. Neuroticism, how emotionally you are stable. You can see a vast area of personality disorders in this phrase, neuroticism, emotional stability. Many people with personality disorder doesn't have any emotional stability. 1 hour they are happy with you, they are kind with you, and suddenly they are so aggressive against you. And again, for example, after 4 hours, again they are good with you. They are prone to have and to assess about the having some major personality disorders, not personality traits. We don't have any problem with personality traits, but with higher severity, with a higher duration, with interference with your daily functions. It can be a disorder, and all types of disorders need therapy and going to psychologists and psychotherapists and other parts. Okay. And psychoticism, the degree to which reality is distorted. We are about the psychosis. Psychosis before 2030, we had a specific disorder with the title of schizophrenia and other parts. For example, mood disorders with psychotic disorder, mood disorder without psychotic disorder, and schizophrenia, schizoaffective. Now we have a group of disorders with the title of schizophrenic spectrum disorders. We are not talking specific points of a spectrum. We are talking about the range. Because in practice, I, as a psychotherapist, cannot label you as a specific as a psych, for example, someone with a schizophrenia. Different people at the same area with different duration, different severity. So after 2013, in the new version of categorization of mental disorders, the categorizer says we don't have any out of culture problem. All the mental disorders are culture based. Culture is very important, and all of them in a range, in a spectrum, not a specific point, a specific diagnostic criteria. Psychoticism, but what for example, in a schizophrenia spectrum disorder, one major problem, one major criteria, diagnosis criteria, is reality distortion. They hear some voices that other people cannot hear. They talk with someone, for example, it was hallucination, auditory hallucination. They talk with someone which is not a real one. It is visual or self suggestion. Or they think that they are God, for example. It is grandiosity. It is delusion, not hallucination. And some other major positive or negative symptoms, as Schneider says. The next one that you can find it, the Big Five model of personality, you can find it in many books of management. Two concepts of psychology are very popular, very regular, very usual in many books of management. One, hierarchy models of needs by Abraham Maslow. Two, the Big Five model of personality, or totally personality tests are very important, very regular in other non-psychological books to management. For example, for organizational development, or D, or HRM, human resources management, and other books about the fundamental attitude in MBA, EMBA, and DBA approaches to organizations and business and market. You should know many good details about the psychological approach. Without that, you are a very traditional manager. Why have you gone to university to pay money and graduate if you want to be a very traditional manager? And your time is up. You cannot work with those traditional approaches. It is the age of digital marketing. In digital marketing, with the highest education, it is very hard to be successful, except that when you want to be a traditional. One of them is Big Five model of personality. The acronym is OCEAN. O for openness to experience, C for conscientiousness, E for extraversion, A for agreeableness, and N for neuroticism. These are the big five personality traits with a very good questionnaire for finding the different aspects of your personality. For example, someone who is open to experience is someone independent, conforming, imaginative, practical, reference for variety, reference for preference for routine. It is the sorry, it is the versus. This is the conflict. They are independent. Other parts from independent personality to conforming personality. In the highest openness to experience, you are independent. In the lowest rate of openness to experience, you are very conforming. In the highest rate of openness to experience, you are imaginative. You think about beyond the present situation. You are imagining about the future, about the other choices, what you can call the out of the box thinking. For example, we know the most open to experience just now investor or entrepreneur is the founder of Tesla. He is the most open person to all type of experience in investment. Elon Musk. Why? Because he is independent. And now, just now we are talking, he's the richest man behind Jeff Bezos, behind Bill Gates, and behind Warren Buffett. He is at the age of 44 now. He is the richest man on the earth. Why? Because out of the box thinking and work on that. It is not only enough. Yes, you should have imagination about the future. You should have out of the box thinking, but act based on that, not only imagination. Imagination also, if you can write some books about your imagination, why not? For example, J.K. Rowling, only imagination and writing the imagination. The creator of Harry Potter, J.K. Rowling. It's very good to know about her life. Her life has had very up downs, from major depression, suicidal ideation, until become the richest woman, the richest female author in the history of writing. From the history, all the time of writing as an author, she is the most moneymaker woman in the field of writing the books. Also, she's the founder and coiner of the phrase Harry Potter. Elon Musk is in industry and organizations. Other parties, conscientiousness. Higher degree is about to be careful because we have a very, very high to be yes or no on your mind. For everything, you have an order, yes or not. It is good for army, perfect. It is good for creation, sorry. You cannot have many disciplines if you want to be a creative. Creative thinking is in opposite part of routine thinking. And careful, disciplined, and organized in other parts, you are careless, impulsive, and disorganized. Extroversion, in the highest degree of extroversion, you are talkative, fun and loving person, and sociable person. And in the minimum part, in the minimum degree, in the lower degree, you are quiet, sober, and retiring. And agreeableness, you are sympathetic, kind, cold, and appreciative. Kind, sorry, and appreciative. And the lowest degree of agreeableness, you are fault finding, with the higher critical thinking. Everything you are critiquing when you are agreeableness, lower agreeableness. You don't want to have good relationship with anyone around you in your society, in your organization. Why? Because you don't want to be agreeable. You are always in an opposition state. Everything. It is called negativism. Negativism is someone with the highest level of to be negative to everything, and cold and unfriendly. And finally, neuroticism or emotional stability. It is the high neuroticism. You are stable, you are calm, and you are secure. And the lower, you are tense, you are anxious, and you are insecure. Okay, the next approach is about the behavioral approach or learning approach, Skinner, B.F. Skinner, and social cognitive approaches, and self-efficacy. And you should know about biological and evolutionary approaches. The important components of personality are inherited. It is called temperament. Temperament is the basic innate disposition that emerge early in life. We have three parts: temperament, character, and personality. You are born with your temperament. Between the age of 2 until the age of 12, your character is being shaped. This is also scientific definition, not popular definition. If you ask, for example, in LA from someone that what is the difference between personality and character, you can hear something completely different from what I am talking about. I'm talking about based on the definitions in psychopathology and psychiatric books about differences and definition of temperament, character, and personality. From the age of 12 to 18, your personality is being shaped. After that, also many people says that your personality is fixed, but scientifically it is not fixed. It is relatively consistent, relatively fixed. You can change. Change is always possible, always. It is not a motto, it is not a slogan, it is a real, but it is hard to change. With the growing up, with the being older and older, the need to change reduced, not the ability to change. People think that no, the ability to change will reduce. No, no, no. And especially at the midlife, between the age of 45 to 55, change has a highly recommended. Why? Because you are gathering your information from the previous life and you are thinking about the last period of your life, because between 10 years to 12 years you have only 10 years or 12 years. For example, if the regular age of dying is near 75 in America, also never 75, when you are 55 you think that yes, what is the result of my life except of my wife, except of my children, except of my car, except of my job? What is the result of my life? Because of that, it is called middle age crisis, the basic questions about the meaning of life, not only about, for example, the result, financial result or social result. Humanistic approaches says emphasize people innate goodness and desire to achieve higher levels of functionality. I forgot to say about the learning approaches. We have three parts. If you read, I think, yes, in week three, I thought, we talk about learning, conditional learning, and social learning. Conditional learning, classical conditioning, opponent conditioning, and about social learning and observational learning by Bandra and other parts. In this approach also, it is not a very, honestly, it is not very important approach to looking at personality, because it's a joke, it is something like joke that you learn your personality. No, your personality say to you what you can learn, what you cannot learn, what you like to learn, what you don't like to. Learning, totally learning, is not the basic part of personality if we are talking about conditional learning. But observational learning, especially in adolescence, peer group is very important. Many persons, many boys and girls at the age of, for example, 14 or 15 says, I tried marijuana. And I asked, why? They said, because of the peer pressure. My peer group, my classmates, my friends says, such a, for example, clean guy, such a uh, mother's boy you are, that if you cannot, for example, smoke marijuana. And after that, we know as life coaches, as teen coaches, we should learn them how to say no. It is the major power skill in your life. The major power skill in your life for all aspects of your life is the power to say no when it is necessary. If you cannot say no when it is necessary to say no, and you say yes, okay, you will lose the game. And after 5 years, your peer group, your friends are now around you, they have gone for their own life, and you are at first, for example, not about only marijuana, because marijuana is legal, I know, but it is not healthy. It's something like the smoking. The smoking is legal. You don't go to court because of using the smoking. Also, if you are under age of 18, the seller and the buyer will go to court. But after that, it is legal, but it is not healthy. Fast food is legal, but it is not healthy. Alcohol is legal, it is not healthy. Legal or legislation is related to your social society. Healthy is it to your nature, to your body, something different. Because of that, companies write on the box of the cigarettes that everybody should know that cancer is as a result of major smoking. Thank you. Why you are selling something which is a carcinogens. Carcinogens is the factor that can create cancer in your body. It's a business. Only that's about the business. You have the right of choice all around the world. It is not about the America, other company, other countries. Each country has its law, but many things in all countries are legal but not healthy. Because of that, the right of choice and the accepting the responsibility of that right of choice is the major differences between adolescence and adulthood. What time you are adult? When you are responsible for your life, not only for earning the money you want to your life, not for example, education, about your choices. We have many chances. If you want to change your chances to your choices, you should be responsible about your choices. And because of responsibility, you should know how to work with your mind, with your temptation, with your craving, with your emotions. If you don't know how to work with your emotion, you're wasting your life, not only your time. Because of that, for example, saying no is a major skill for to be powerful, for to be a good leader, to be a manager or a self-manager. We are not talking only about the organizations. We are talking about the how manage yourself. Every type of management is self-management. Every type of leadership is self-leadership. With our teachers in hypnotherapy, they said every type of hypnosis is self-hypnosis. In coaching, we say every type of coaching is self-coaching. Every type of coaching with the basic roots of self-coaching. And social cognitive approaches that we talked about is self-efficacy versus self-esteem. Humanistic approaches that you can find in positive psychology. Also, positive psychology is not humanistic approach to personality. Positive psychology is the basic, the basis and the roots of positive psychology approach to human being is humanistic approach. But positive psychology is very rigid, very scientific based, very research based. Humanistic is a little smooth than positive psychology. Emphasizes people innate goodness. It says, I as a human and basically by God, by nature, by universe, by my father, mother, everything you want to know it. It's not no matter. My roots are good as a human being. I'm not a dog. I'm not a cat. I have some different separation from other animals, especially from other mammals, especially from other homos. I'm Homo sapiens. I'm not the only Homo on the earth. Desire to achieve higher levels of functioning, self actualization, you find it in Abraham Maslow hierarchy of needs, a state of self fulfillment in which people realize their highest potential, each in a unique way, as Carl Rogers, and Abraham Maslow said. Unconditioned positive regard is the phrase by Carl Rogers as the major technique for accepting and understanding other people. Unconditional positive regards, an attitude of acceptance and respect on the part of an observer, no matter what a person says or does. Only observe yourself, only observe other people. Comparing approaches to personality, no single approach is the best explanation of personality. None of them. We can use mix of them. For example, in our organization, we start with DIAC, DISC, DISC, or sometimes MBTI. I do some version, for example, some types of interview, like motivational interview, some general health questionnaire for having a good perspective of general health status of that person. No clear way to scientific test the theories against each other. It is one of the weaknesses of scientific approaches to personality. And finally, personality can be viewed from a number of perspectives simultaneously. It is not very important to know about the theories, but personality assessment is good for you as a manager. Standard measures designed to assess behavior objectively. We have reliability and validity about the major concepts that the test is testing. For example, if I want to know about the job matching, we should assess, we should gather information that are these questions in our questionnaire is gathering information for our goals or not. These are gathering information for other things. It is about validity and reliability. Is mean If I do some test about one person, and again after some weeks you do the same test, we should have some near results. Tests are based on norms, standards of test performance that permit the comparison of one person's scores with the scores of others who have taken the same test. It is called normalization of test. Self measures of personality, self report measures, gathering data about people by asking them questions about the sample of their behavior. Yeah, it is self report. It's very, very important with a not good validity and reliability because it is your also the we have some questions for lie detection in the self-report measures, but it is not always so valid. Most of them is MMP2I, MMPI2. Also MMPI2, you cannot you can find it for the personality, but more than personality, it is about the major parts of mental disorders. It is self-report, highly authoritative, highly validated test about the personality with a very old-fashioned, and also you can see here it is the next version. Next version now it is about 30 years, 20 years, more than 20 years that we are using MMPI2, a widely used self-report test that identifies people with psychological difficulties and can predict a variety of other people. And test standardization is something else. Validates question in personality by studying the responses of people with known diagnosis. We are using in people that we know that they have some major problems before assessment by tests. And the final part is about the projective methods, projective personality test in which a person is shown an ambiguous, unclear stimulus and asked to describe it or tell a story about it. The major problem in projective methods for assessment of personality is about the ambiguity. The tests are not based on the numbers. The tests are not quantitative. They are narrative tests. They are so deep, very, very deep tests. For example, Rorschach, as you see in the next part, is one of the greatest ink-based tests. But the major problem is that interpretation of the test is related to the psychotherapist, which is interpreting the test. If he or she doesn't have any good, deep, long-term training about how to interpret the signs in the test, the final report is not so valid. So, for very deep problems, we can use projective methods, but it is not so regular in organization, even in clinical settings. Why? Highly time consuming, so expensive, and need very, very, very experienced psychotherapists to do the projective methods. I love them, but it is a personal preference, not an academic preference. In academia, always they use the short time, short answer, and good based decision making for tests. But you should know about the projective methods for assessing the person, especially about personality. For example, when you want to have some good assessment about the other mental disorders like depression, like anxiety, sexual disorder, substance abuse disorder, disorder with infancy, or for example, other mood disorders, dissociative disorders, other mental disorders. It is good to know about the test very, very quantitative disorders, disorder assessments. But in personality, you want to know about the hidden layers of the existence, so-called personality. Because of that, in personality disorder, especially in personality disorders, it's better to use some degree of projective method without any exact numbering, exact grading for the answers. Rorschach is the first one. It is we are always sorry for Rorschach because Rorschach died at the age of 37. And until that age, he had been he had created a major good test for uh, metrics, so-called Rorschach test. After that, other colleagues follow his work, and now we have a very good projective method and very heavy test, so-called Rorschach test or Rorschach method. Shows a series of symmetric visual stimuli by inks. People are then asked what the figures represent to them. You see here, it is the ink, and I say, what you see here? It's a one of the Rorschach cards. The next one is a thematic apperception test or TAT, a series of pictures about which a person is asked to write a story. We have talked about it in previous session. And final part is behavioral assessment, direct measures of an individual behavior used to describe personality characteristic. May be carried out naturalistically by observing people in their own setting. One of the good procedures for behavioral assessment is about natural and very, very non biased observing other people. By observing people in their own settings or in the laboratory, by observing people in control situations, for example, for experiments, experimental parts. And what is intelligence? The major question is intelligence a personality based part? G or G factor? The single general factor, G is for general, for mental ability assumed to underlie intelligence in some early theories. It says that there is no distinct, very specific aspect of intelligence. We have a general factor, general intelligence, underlying all aspects of intelligence you can find in one person. For example, spatial intelligence, mathematical intelligence, musical intelligence. Now we are talking about business intelligence, financial intelligence, spiritual intelligence, emotional intelligence, social intelligence. We can find many types of intelligence. The G factor says all of them are based on the one global, one total factor, so-called G factor. Fluid intelligence and crystallized intelligence, another theory about it, reflects information processing capability, reasoning, and memory as fluid intelligence. And crystallized intelligence says the accumulation of information, skills, and strategies that are learned through experience and can be applied in problem solving situations. They are learnable, reflects our ability to call up information from long term memory. Theory of multiple intelligence proposes 8 spheres of intelligence, each relatively independent of the others. It is the most famous intelligence theory, can be used in organization and also in education. It is the theory of Howard Gardner. It is the most important, most applicable. Musical intelligence, bodily kinesthetic intelligence, for example, for playing basketball, for dancing, you should have bodily kinesthetic intelligence because you should know about the how to move according other people or according, for example, a piece of music. It is you know to how to use kinesthetic is mean movement. Bodily kinesthetic intelligence is mean bodily movement, and logical mathematical intelligence, linguistic intelligence, spatial intelligence, interpersonal, intrapersonal with yourself. How do you know? What do you know about yourself? Intrapersonal in communication with yourself, and naturalistic. And the last one is information processing approach, which says that your intelligence is based on measure intelligence by the way people store material in memory and use that material to solve intellectual tasks. Some people always, when they are talking about information processing, when they are talking about intelligence, they are talking about information processing. For that, they say, "Wow, how intelligent you are! You can find, for example, that name so fast." It is not about problem solving at first, remembering, recalling, and reminding the information. Thanks for time that you spent for watching this video, and I hope you have gained during this video the major concepts of personality. See you next week. Bye.